we'll give it just a minute for the live stream to start. Oh, that's good. Somebody has left season's greetings, earthlings, in the pulpit. Just leave it here. Good morning. Right. Well, it's 10 o'clock, so why don't we get started? Good morning, everyone. And welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair. I am joined in the sanctuary by the Frozen Chosen. There was a joke for many, many years about Unitarians in New England being reserved and not very talkative and very full of belief of their own salvation, and so they were called the Frozen Chosen. So for the 16 people who are here in the sanctuary, you can now own that name in a different way, as it is -12 outside and -32 with wind chill at 10 a.m. For everyone else, it is good to see you. I hope you are on the live stream. I hope you're staying warm. It is a challenging conditions day out there. So wherever you are, however you're joining us, we are glad that you're with us. However you are joining us this morning, what we are doing stays the same. We gather every Sunday to proclaim the Unitarian Church of Lincoln as a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. However we do that, whether we gather as the Frozen at 6300 A Street, gather with our children in the next wing over, or watch on this live stream either live or when it's warmed up enough to be in front of a computer for an hour. However you join us, we are glad you're here. We're going to light our chalice this morning with words edited by our worship associate, Andy Lake, who could not be here this morning, who writes, "We light this chalice today in reflections on the systems which we inhabit, in awareness of the many kinds of suffering they may cause, whether intentionally or indifferently, in acknowledgement of the varying degrees to which those around us are affected, and the intersecting identities that may factor into the severity with which they may be impacted, and in the intention of alleviating what suffering we can, and in solidarity with the suffering we cannot." So we'll begin with our first hymn, number 168 in the gray hymnal, or up on this screen here. If you would rise in body or in spirit and join in singing One More Step.
If anyone would like to come forward for the story, you're welcome to do so now. We might have an equal number of children and adults today, actually. Our story today is called We Shall Overcome, the Story of a Song, by Debbie Levy and illustrated by Vanessa Bantley Newton. I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I'll be all right someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe I'll be all right someday. Back in slavery times, when people who were enslaved worked long days, with no pay and no say, no freedom, no fairness, no choice and no chance, the people sang. They suffered, and yet they sang. To soothe the hurt, to fight the cruelty, to declare that, yes, they were human beings. It took a war, the Civil War, to end slavery. But even after, white people treated black people as less than fully human, excluding them, ignoring them, blaming them, even attacking them, all because of the color of their skin. Black people were no longer slaves, that was true, but they were not truly free. And still, they believed things would get better. And still they sang, "We will overcome. We will overcome. We will overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we will overcome someday." Wasn't easy to believe. Wasn't easy when white people shut out African Americans from good jobs and good pay, shut out from schools and libraries and neighborhoods, restaurants and hotels and bathrooms, train cars and bus seats, playgrounds and parks. But Black Americans and some white Americans did believe they could overcome the unfairness, hate, and violence. They started to protest. They brought a church song, "I Will Overcome," to the streets. But since they were marching and working together, they sang, "We will overcome. We together will overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. And from the streets, the song reached the ears of city people, country people, followers, and leaders. It reached Martin Luther King, the most important leader working for justice for African Americans. And he took the song with him in his heart everywhere he traveled. The words changed a little, but the spirit stayed the same. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. There were many forms of race hatred and many ways to fight it. Some students fought by sitting down in restaurants and asking to be served. They didn't ask for free food. They didn't want special service. They just wanted to buy a meal, like any white person could. The students sat and sat, waiting for hamburgers and donuts and sodas. That never came. The students sat and waited until they were arrested, and as they were taken away to jail, they sang, "We are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone today." More and more people decided to stand up for rights for African Americans. One small group, the Freedom Singers, traveled 50,000 miles in 9 months to living rooms, concert halls, elementary schools, jails, high schools, and rallies, bringing "We Shall Overcome" to people in 40 states, inspiring them to believe that change was coming. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. The biggest gathering of people united in support of fairness for African Americans took place in the nation's capital. Marching toward the Lincoln Memorial, hundreds of thousands of people, Black and white, young and old, joined hands, joined voices, and sang. And slowly, slowly, things were changing. Laws were passed, but race hatred stayed strong, even stronger than laws. So President Lyndon Johnson gave a speech. His ancestors once held slaves in Texas and Georgia, but President Johnson looked out at the millions of people watching him on television, spoke of equal rights, human rights, and voting rights for African Americans, and recited the words of the song. Black and white together, black and white together, black and white together someday. How could such a song stay in one country? It could not. We Should Overcome sailed across the oceans to other countries where people faced injustice. It traveled to South Africa, where Black Africans embraced it as their own freedom song. In their long struggle against an all-white government that treated them as outcasts in their own land. We will live in peace. We will live in peace. We will live in peace someday. The song traveled to India, East Germany, South Korea, Czechoslovakia, Northern Ireland, Bangladesh, China, the Middle East, South America, wherever people worked for a better life. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Even as it spread across the globe, the song never really left its American home. It took a very long time, but race hatred did grow weaker. Freedom grew stronger, and President Lyndon Johnson was followed by another president and another and another and another and another and another, and then the people of the United States, black and white, young and old, elected an African American man to be their president. And on that day, people sang the song that so many voices had sung before, in pain and in protest. On that day, they sang in happiness. Today, people still struggle against hatred and for freedom, against poverty and for fairness, against despair and for hope. And we still sing. We sing to declare that, yes, we are all human beings, deserving of respect, sharing the same planet, the same future, together. That is the end of our story. Children are dismissed back to their classroom.
Welcome. I'm Kim Zeman, a member of the Board of Trustees. I want to offer a special welcome to any of you who are visiting for the first time. Announcements today. Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair will be teaching a 5-week series called Owning Your Religious Past on Tuesday nights, beginning January 23rd. Information is in the Friday e-blasts. In a couple weeks, our Green Sanctuary Committee is offering a panel discussion on Saturday, February 3rd at 10 a.m. about electric air source heat pumps and financial incentives. Thank you for joining us today in line or in person. A central part of our service is the time we join together as a community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and then they are woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified. We are comforted in our sorrows. I invite you to type into the chat or speak into the shared space your name or the name of another you wished to be remembered in sorrow. The Cedardahl family. Jala. Anyone who is suffering from the cold we are having right now. From the chat, the Reinmillers are battling COVID, and to use Star Trek as a quote of our anger about it, from hell's heart we stab at COVID. From Elle Stratman, sorrow for her dear friend Cedar, who is struggling. And to beloved Marcia, Ray, and the Cedardahl family. Jeanette Nakata dealing with flu and mobility issues. I now invite you to type into the chat or speak into this shared space your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in joy.
Detroit Lions have their first home playoff game of almost my lifetime today.
All right. Celebrating the Detroit Lions. From Evelyn Weymouth, joy to all the people who braved the wind and cold to bring us this service. From Mary Kay, Trish, and her family. We. I'm unsure if that's a joy or a sorrow, but the children who had not had to go to school because of all the snow days, probably joy for them, not so much for their parents.
Another joy that tomorrow's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we get to celebrate his legacy.
Okay. Joy of celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day and his legacy. A joy from Elle Stratman, a loving son who has dug us out multiple times in the past several days. From Christine Davis, Monica, who has been offered a job with Lincoln Literacy. From Mary Kay, our good neighbors on Elmwood Avenue. From Molly Clockson, our great-granddaughter Palmer Graves, born yesterday. Marvin Havlat is a great-grandpa. We know, too, that there are some joys, some sorrows that are yet unspoken but still deeply felt. Let us hold a moment of silence for everything unspoken. Thank you for your presence. Please remain seated for the next song.
Good morning.
Please rise in body or in spirit. Bill and I are going to do each part twice, and then the last time just sing whatever feels good to you.
So the drum starts, then the melody, then the descant, each twice through, and then all the way through twice with the accompaniment. So here's your drum, guys.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Each week, as part of our service, we take up a collection to support the work of this church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talents, and our treasure. As this song plays, we actually don't have ushers at the moment, so I just saw our treasurer take off running for the offering plates. So, if you are online, as most of you are, there are 65 people in the live stream right now. So, for those of you in the live stream, you can give by texting UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. If you are here in the room, you can do that as well. Or I believe Jason has gone in search of the offering plates as an emergency usher. But for now, we will also listen to more music from Bill. I do want to say just a few words about this next reading before we play it. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day, and there are at least two Martin Luther Kings that we recognize on Martin Luther King Day. The first is the uniting figure who's now a federal holiday, whose stories are written about, and who is seen as one of sort of the great Americans of the 20th century, bringing us all together. The other Martin Luther King is King the Radical, who we don't remember quite as often. The king that was not beloved in his time, in part because he challenged many. That king had long arguments with Whitney Young, the president of the Urban League, who was a member with his wife at First Unitarian in Omaha, and friends with Richard Nixon. He and King worked together on some things and argued bitterly about others. So this reading, this speech that we're going to hear, is part of the radical tradition in King. It's an excerpt from a speech he gave the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in the summer of 1967, the last time he addressed that group. This is the king whose critique of American society is one that we are still trying to live up to. Haven't gotten there just yet. This is also the king of our tradition, I think.
I want to say to you as I move to my conclusion, as we talk about where do we go from here, we must honestly face the fact that the movement must address itself to the question of restructuring the whole of American society. There are 40 million poor people here. And one day we must ask the question, why are there 40 million poor people in America? And when you begin to ask that question, you're raising a question about the economic system, about a broader distribution of wealth. When you ask that question, you begin to question the capitalistic economy. And I'm simply saying that more and more, we've got to begin to ask questions about the whole society. We are called upon to help the discouraged beggars in life's marketplace. But one day we must come to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. It means that questions must be raised. You see, my friends, when you deal with this, you begin to ask the question, who owns the oil? You begin to ask the question, who owns the iron ore? You begin to ask the question, why is it that people have to pay water bills in a world that's 2/3 water? These are words that must be said. Now, don't think you have me in a bind today. I'm not talking about communism. What I'm talking about is far beyond communism. My inspiration didn't come from Karl Marx. My inspiration didn't come from Engels. My inspiration didn't come from Trotsky. My inspiration didn't come from Lenin. Yes, I read Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital a long time ago. And I saw that maybe Marx didn't follow Hegel enough. He took his dialectics, but he left out his idealism and his spiritualism, and he went over to a German philosopher by the name of Feuerbach and took his materialism and made it into a system that he called dialectical materialism. I have to reject that. What I'm saying to you this morning, communism forgets that life is individual. Capitalism forgets that life is social. The kingdom of brotherhood is found neither in the thesis of communism nor the antithesis of capitalism, but in a higher synthesis. It's found in a higher synthesis that combines the truths of both. Now, when I say questioning the whole society, it means ultimately coming to see that the problem of racism, the problem of economic exploitation, and the problem of war are all tied together. These are the triple evils that are interrelated. And if you will let me be a preacher just a little bit. One night a juror came to Jesus, and he wanted to know what he could do to be saved. Jesus didn't get bogged down on the kind of isolated approach of what you shouldn't do. Jesus didn't say, now, Nicodemus, you must stop lying. He didn't say, Nicodemus, now you must not commit adultery. He didn't say, now, Nicodemus, you must stop cheating if you're doing that. He didn't say, Nicodemus, you must stop drinking liquor if you're doing that excessively. He said something altogether different because Jesus realized something basic. That if a man will lie, he will steal. And if a man will steal, he will kill. So instead of just getting bogged down on one thing, Jesus looked at him and said, Nicodemus, you must be born again. In other words, your whole structure must be changed. A nation that will keep people in slavery for 244 years will thingify them and make them things. And therefore they will exploit them and poor people generally, economically. And a nation that will exploit economically will have to have foreign investments and everything else, and it will have to use its military might to protect them. All of these problems are tied together. What I'm saying today is that we must go from this convention and say, America, you must be born again.
So there's a consistent theme in our community this year. That is the upcoming Article 2 vote in the Unitarian Universalist Association. If you are not yet tired of hearing me talk about Article 2, I still have 5 months before the vote. We will get there. This is a change in the language that describes who we are as a national association. What has been the 7 principles and 6 sources. And part of the proposal is not just words, but an image, which we're going to put up here. It takes the values that we hold together and puts them in relationship to each other. But at the center of the whole thing is a single value, is love. Here's how my colleague Tess Bomberger describes it. At the center of this image is love, that heart of universalism, that all eternal and all-conquering force. Around it and from it flows values that express that love. This love that sits at the center of this image is not sentimental love or romantic love. It is the love we grow in our communities, a deep and abiding love that affirms our worth no matter what we do or don't achieve or believe. This love is a belief in ourselves and in one another that nothing can rip apart. This love affirms our interdependence. It is a love that says we all deserve to be loved, whether we have been hurt or hurt others. For some of us, the love at the center of this image includes a divine love that holds us tenderly and tightly. It is a fierce, protecting, liberating love. It is a hopeful love, a love that inspires people of goodwill and sacrificial spirit to overcome evil and to make this earth as heavenly as possible, just and equitable, pluralistic, affirming all people and all nations, all races, all creeds. Ours is and always has been a heretical faith, a courageous faith, a covenantal faith, and a faith that calls us to work with the all-conquering, liberating love to make this earth a heaven. So it is liberating love that is at the heart of our faith. Liberating love is the thing that will change the world, the thing that will transform ourselves and the world, as we say here at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln every Sunday morning. But liberating love also comes with a question. Liberation from what? From what do we need to be liberated? Not as a spiritual, theoretical term, but what do we need to be liberated from, set free from here in Lincoln, Nebraska? We, this few hundred people in Nebraska, what do we need to be set free from? There's a few ways into this. One is the Buddhist concept of samsara, that life is the experience of suffering, driven by our attachment to things. And by letting go of attachment, we free ourselves from the cycle of loss and suffering. We're actually going to take that up in the sermon next week. But what else do we need to be liberated from? Let me tell you a story about this place. Over the last 18 months, members of this congregation have worked with people of faith across Lincoln as part of the Justice in Action Network on criminal justice reform in Lancaster County. We've held cottage meetings, interviews with local experts and elected officials, sat in on meetings at the county level, read countless reports, advocated and won a publicly available dashboard to get information on who is incarcerated at the jail. Since getting back from sabbatical in July, I have learned more than I ever thought I would about the Lancaster County Jail and the systems that surround it. But here's another story. A few years ago, a young man new to Lincoln came to a few events at the Unitarian Church. I remember him because he reached out to find some time to sit down with me and talk about theology, which is incredible. That's not a thing that happens very often on a Tuesday afternoon for me. And so when it happens, I love it. He didn't end up joining here, but he got involved in a few different congregations in Lincoln, came to a few Justice in Action events. And then a few months ago, several of us got handwritten letters from him posted from the county jail. He had been arrested on a minor charge and was asking for help posting bail. And what has followed has been Kafkaesque. Months later, we cannot get him out. We barely know why he's there. Despite the hours, dozens, hundreds of hours, volunteers have put in getting to know the criminal justice system, we've been absolutely stymied in our attempts to help this one person who we know, who is one of us. He's been in the county jail for months now. From what do we need to be liberated? From systems that oppress us, sometimes very literally. Here's what we know from the dashboard that Justice in Action got passed this fall. There are currently 631 people imprisoned in the Lancaster County Jail. The operational capacity of that jail is 665. We're in a little bit of a downturn right now. For much of 2023, the average daily population at the jail was well over 700 people. Now, a brief primer. The county jail is not the state prison, right? It serves a different purpose. Long-term inmates are held in the prison. The jail is theoretically a short-term holding facility for people who have been arrested and are waiting trial, or who are involved in shorter sentences. So think days and weeks, not months. Right now, of the 631 Lincolnites imprisoned in the jail, 354 have been there longer than 2 months. 284 have been there longer than 3 months. 139 of our neighbors have been in the Lancaster County Jail for more than 6 months. 27 Lincolnites, people in Lincoln who we know have spent more than a year spending the night in the Lancaster County Jail. Because of overcrowding now, the county is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to house people in other county facilities further out in Nebraska because they don't have room for them at the Lancaster County Jail. So what is our role as people of faith? It's important to say what we're not. We're not social workers. This is one of the most heartbreaking parts of day-to-day work at 6300 A Street, because the amount of need in our community is enormous. People know this church as a place that wants to help. And we do not have the resources, expertise, or time to give the kind of help that we are asked for on a weekly basis. We do some, don't get me wrong there. We have a discretionary fund that we use to help out when we can. It's funded by members of this congregation. I and the staff regularly meet with people who come in and need a place to be heard for a while. Even if they don't leave with changed circumstances, this is a warm place with a cup of coffee and a compassionate ear. But our friend in the jail doesn't need a cup of coffee and a compassionate ear. He needs a caseworker to navigate a Byzantine, inhumane system. We aren't social workers. We're also not a policy think tank. This one's actually harder for Unitarians, I think, because we often want to solve complex problems by thinking our way through them, using competence, research, and rhetoric to win the day. Call it the West Wing fallacy, right? All the really knotty problems of society, from criminal justice reform to climate change to racism, can be ended if we just find the right solution, probably in a committee meeting, and then present that solution to the powers that be, who will see the wisdom of it and immediately adopt it. The problem with that approach is that it assumes that we are better at managing a county jail than, say, the director of the county jail, who has spent 20 years managing a county jail. That we know better, and the problem is simply that those other people aren't applying themselves. But here's what I've seen in the last few months. Most of the people working in the Lancaster County Corrections system seem like dedicated public servants, trying their best. They're often experts in their field. The problem is not one of expertise. Even if it were, I don't think a church would necessarily be the place where that expertise is found. The problem is one of the system. There's a regular meeting every quarter. It's the Lancaster County Justice Council. The council is made up of representatives of every agency and department that's involved in criminal justice in Lincoln. The police, the court systems, the jail, community corrections, the sheriff's department, Region 5 mental health services, the public defender, all packed into a single conference room with a couple dozen people in it every time they meet. And none of those people or agencies is responsible for the whole system. But they all contribute to it. And one of the things that we know about systems is that in systems, problems accumulate. So if Region 5 mental health services is backed up in doing evaluations, they might not be available right away. And sometimes the county attorney has a backlog, or the public defender needs time to understand a case, but by the time they're caught up, there's a mix-up at the jail. And so if 5 agencies all slow down the process by a day each, that's not a 5-day delay. That can be months. Criminal justice in Lincoln, like a lot of systems, creates a diffusion of responsibility where nobody is the cause of the whole problem. So everyone just makes tweaks around the edges of what their part is. What is our role in that room? What is our role as people of faith? In 1967, in his last speech to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Martin Luther King gave his answer to that. We must honestly face the question, the fact, he said, that the movement must address itself to the question of restructuring the whole of American society. There are 40 million poor people here, and one day we must ask the question, why are there 40 million poor people in America? One day we must come to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. Our role is not to be social workers. It's not to be policy wonks. It's not to be a cog in a machine distributing responsibility so wide that it is not felt. Our role as people of faith is to stand in the public square and ask, why are there 40 million poor people in America? This is not a simple story. This is not the king of children's books. This is the king that quoted Feuerbach and Marx and talked about the military-industrial complex and the interrelated evils of militarism, economic injustice, and racism. The king that said, this whole system contributes to the problem. Why are there 40 million poor people in America? Why are there 630 people in the Lancaster County Jail? Why have 100 of them been there for 6 months? we might not be the people who can fix it. We probably shouldn't. That's not our lane. That's the job of the director of the jail. But we are people who can and must make a moral case that the people in the county jail are our neighbors. And our faith teaches us that they deserve dignity. King preached often on the parable of the Good Samaritan. The story goes like this. A man was traveling on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho and was set upon by thieves. And he was hurt and left by the side of the road for dead. And a priest and a Levite and a scribe go by. They pass him by. The civil and religious authority does not help him. And then a Samaritan, somebody from outside this man's group of obvious care, sees him. And King says it's the Samaritan that makes the moral jump. Because while the priest and the Levite pass by, scared of what might happen to them if they stop, or thinking that they have more important things to be doing, it's the Samaritan that asks, if I do not stop, what will happen to this man? This is the moral imagination that we are called to. The parable of the Good Samaritan, like the story of the Lancaster jail, is a story of diffuse responsibility. Maybe the priest and the Levite both thought that the other person was in charge of fixing the Jericho road. Maybe they were waiting for a study. But it is the Samaritan who says, if I do not stop, this man will die. So let us return to liberating love. What do we need to be liberated from? From systems that diminish our responsibility, that diffuse responsibility and say someone else will fix it. Because the other thing that King said, 2 Unitarian Universalists at the Ware Lecture at General Assembly, that we then put straight into our Article 2, is that we are all interconnected. What happens to anyone in our community affects the humanity of us all. And so by working for liberation at the county jail, we're working to liberate ourselves. This is a love that says we all deserve to be loved. Das Baumberger writes, whether we have been hurt or have hurt others, for some of us the love at the center of this image includes a divine love that holds us tenderly and tightly. It is a fierce, protective, and liberating love. Over the next few months, our participation in Justice in Action is going to ramp up in advance of our community action in May. The next step is to show up at a meeting here at church of all the Unitarians involved in this effort on February 18th, next month. If you haven't gotten involved yet, but want to, this is the thing to come to. Put it in your calendars and be here. February 18th. We'll have a meal right after service, and then we'll gather to hear what the next steps are for that organization on that day. Love is at the center of our faith. That's something this new Article 2 gets absolutely right. And love without action is a Hallmark card. We are not in the business of Hallmark cards. We are in the business of liberation. So may it be, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 1017 in the Teal hymnal, or right up here, Building a New Way. If you would, please rise in body or in spirit, or join in singing at home on the live stream. best to cue.
Here we go, I'll count.
As we close out this service, go in peace, but also go just a little bit angry, because anger is a part of faith as well. Also, go warm. As a reminder, the last time we had a winter storm like this, some people's furnaces went out and we found out afterwards. If that is the case for you, if you are watching online or if you are here, please reach out. We are about the work of supporting each other. That is practical work on days like this. So if you need support, let the church know that's one of the reasons that we are here. Don't let us find out about it 2 days later. With that, go forth or go to your kitchen and get another cup of coffee. Amen.